Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Secretary of State. Let's stick with this important point about opacity and the press release that Liberty Steel very kindly sent out the day before our meeting, where they say that they intend to repay Credit Suisse in full, and this will, quote, complete the restructuring and refinancing of its UK operations, which sounds very, very promising. Secretary of State, at the height, I think Credit Suisse exposure to GFG was £1.2 billion. We know that in 2019, the Swiss asset manager, GAM, had £600 million exposure to GFG, which GFG had to buy back. And in 2020, we learned yesterday that with Wylands Bank, another part of GFG, that GFG has successfully paid back £194 million. So £600 million, £194 million, and now £1.2 billion. So, State, do you know where the money is coming from?
Look, my job is not to be the finance manager of GFG. We have to give them some credit. Mr. Gupta said that he would look to refinance the assets. It would appear that he's succeeding in doing that. But as a quid pro quo, as a compromise, he has to divest some of the UK assets. Now, I'm not privy to the financial dealings, the gearing, the leverage of the business. And that's a matter for the creditors. But clearly, creditors at the moment are willing to extend him and his group more finance. And that's a matter for them.
Quite right, Secretary of State. And but if I could just tease you a little further on it, the £1.2 billion, the assets that have been presented for sale, is it the opinion of the department that they would account for the full amount of that 1.2 billion?
Well, I mean, obviously, in terms of the 1.2 billion that's due, you will appreciate that, Mr. Fuller, that we have to see what the term of the loan is. I'm not quite sure that this 1.2 billion is due immediately. And in any case, even if it were due immediately, creditors can reschedule the debt. So they could come to an agreement where he could pay it off over 2 or 3 or 4 years. We don't know the terms of the debt of the refinancing. But clearly, this is a situation that we're monitoring very closely.
And White Oak is a company that's been associated with the GFG Group and providing financing, and particularly in Australia. Is White Oak a specialist in supply chain financing, and therefore it's akin to Greensill?
So my understanding of White Oak, and I'm not privy to their workings, I haven't met any of the officials that work there, is that it's a San Francisco private equity type firm, which invests particularly in I think distressed debt and kind of high leverage finance. That's my understanding of what the business does. And clearly, they're specialists in this, and they've had a long working relationship with GFG Group, and they will have terms of refinancing, which we're not privy to at the moment.
Okay. Yesterday, the Governor of the Bank of England said that the PRA identified problems in late 2018 with Wylands Bank, and that it started its first investigation in Q1 of 2019. Wylands Bank being part of the GFG Group. The GFG Group bought the UK arm of the Nigerian bank, Diamond Bank, in April 2019. Do you understand why it was permitted to purchase that bank?
Well, clearly, if the investigation starts off as a secret investigation, that won't be widely known. The concerns about the bank won't be widely known, and you will understand that when these investigations are happening, often not in public, the bank can operate normally and it can acquire assets in a normal fashion. And that's clearly what's happened. Now it would appear that the result of those investigations has given the bank cause to look more widely, and they've publicised the fact that they've looked into this bank. But it's easy with hindsight, Mr. Fuller, to say why didn't we do this? Why didn't we do that?
No,
but
absolutely.
But actually, at the time, none of these concerns were made public.
Absolutely, Secretary of State. It's just, if the Bank of England had concerns about one bank, why did they permit him to purchase another bank? But if I can just add on a broad question, you've taken a very clear stance on protecting taxpayers' money. Many of us would applaud that. And I just have been totting up some of the other political responses to GFG Group. So £7 million Scottish Government loan in 2016.
That's right.
To help GFG acquire the mills in Scotland. £575 million Scottish Government loan guarantee for Liberty's acquisition of the Loch Harbour works. £600,000 Welsh government grant for a plant in Wales again in 2016. An 86 million euro Italian government guarantee for a green steel loan to Liberty Magona SRL. An 18 million euro French government loan guarantee to Liberty Aluminium in Poitou. A £180,000 additional grant by the Welsh government to Liberty's Welsh plant. A £95,000 grant by Innovate UK to Liberty Powder Metals, and an investment of 12.1 million by Scottish Enterprise into Maygen Holdings, which is 43% owned by CIMEC UK Energy Holdings, a part of GFG Alliance, and 49.2 million Australian dollars to support Whyalla Steelworks in Australia. Secretary of State, why do other politicians fall over themselves to give this man so much money?
Well, I mean, that's a question that you could direct to them. I know certainly the Scottish government are very exposed in this way, and they've given millions, as you say, as you've described, to Mr. Gupta's group. I think the answers are fairly obvious. I think someone comes and says they've got the magic formula to keep steel jobs, to keep steel assets operating. There is a temptation for government involvement. As you are good enough to mention, I looked at this situation. Clearly, the £170 million was a big ask on the British taxpayer, and I had doubts, and I expressed those doubts to the committee. And just to go back, to be very clear, reinforce my position. There were two reasons. One was that the GFG group was opaque. We didn't know where the money was going. And secondly, related to that, if a UK government gave them money, it wasn't clear to me, as Secretary of State, that this money would stay within the UK. And you've just mentioned a whole host of international assets that the company owns. So in retrospect, I'm very pleased that you've been good enough to mention the fact that it was the right call. It was a good judgment. And many politicians, not just in the UK, I think would do well to learn those lessons. And they've got to learn to be custodians of good, responsible custodians of public money.
Thank you.